Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 186. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
It's draft day, Jared. Draft day.
Yeah, we're recording this the day of the NFL's first round draft. Going to be pretty interesting since it's all digital. No guests this week. It's just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us, you and I. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any like mess ups during the NFL draft because it is all digital. You know, if they have to pause it or do an extension, it's going to be interesting to see how people adapt. The cool thing is, I'm just going to go off on a really quick tangent. The Bears GM was talking about how this whole situation has forced them to do their interview process and scouting and everything a little bit differently than past years, obviously. But that it's taught him some things about time management with that stuff that they could use moving forward, you know? It's kind of like one of those things you take stuff for granted until you don't have it anymore, right? So...
yeah, something's going to happen. There's going to be a glitch and the system goes down, and then it comes back up, and all of a sudden, the New England Patriots have all the first-round picks, and everyone's just going to accept it.
Here's the thing, too, is communication is key because, for instance, I'm a big Nebraska Cornhuskers fan, right? They have two twin D-tackle brothers that are going into the draft this year, Carlos and Khalil Davis. Both start with a K. So when you're drafting, one of them's more athletic than the other one. They're both still good. They're supposed to go between the third and the sixth round, right? But if a team drafts one, meaning to draft the other, you know what I mean? Got to be careful. Anyways, that's our sports talk for the week. Let's hop into the video game stuff. We're going to be going over the rundown of some quickie news. Then going to be talking about the March MPD numbers, which are dominated by Animal Crossing. I know, shocker. And lastly, we got a bunch of Xbox news. So this is a pretty Xbox-centric episode this week. We've been talking about PlayStation quite a bit, I've noticed, the last couple of weeks with the DualSense controller and then the Bloomberg report. Now we got a bunch of meaty Xbox stuff to talk about, and the truth of the matter, this is probably going to be the way news is going to be moving forward throughout the year with everything getting delayed. It's going to be talking about the next-gen consoles and stuff, and Nintendo's been pretty quiet. I mean, Animal Crossing was their last big release, and I don't know when we're going to see their next big release. Maybe until fall, who knows? So it's going to be interesting, a lot of Xbox and PlayStation stuff, but let's get started. First off, Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're going to talk about it at the end of the show, but have you started it yet?
Yeah, I'm about 6 hours in.
Cool. We'll get into that later on in the show. That game shipped 3.5 million units in its first 3 days. That's combining shipped and sales. There were some headlines that quickly went up saying that, this is the fastest selling PS4 exclusive. Not the case. Both of the numbers that Spider-Man and God of War touted were actual sales, not shipped included. So though this is impressive, it didn't pass those, and a lot of those had to actually get redacted and edited after the fact.
I wondered too, because that was the first 3 days, so it might not have been as much of an effect, but that game is hard to buy right now, physically. So
yep. And remember that it actually got shipped out early to Australia for a week and a half, I think.
Good
Remember?
point.
So who knows? It's still going to sell a bunch. Funny enough, so when we talk about Final Fantasy VII, it's lauded as a historical game in terms of the video game industry, right? It's up there with the Tetrises and just the classic games, Super Mario Brothers. That game the original has only sold in its lifetime a little over 11.5 million copies. Crazy, dude, right?
Yeah, there's a handful of stats out there that similar to that are hilarious. Where I think Ocarina of Time for N64 didn't sell very much at all. There's a handful more that some of the greatest games ever, and it's mostly from that era or earlier. That didn't sell all that well. It's kind of a weird thing.
Put into context, not Animal Crossing. We'll get into that later. Pokemon Sword and Shield sold 15 million copies combined in 6 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
Put that into context. And it is Pokemon. I know it's the most hyperbolic of the franchises because I think it sells like hotcakes. But congratulations, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm sure when both of us are done with that game, we'll do a little bit of a spoiler mode for it and talk about our experiences as two people who didn't play the original. Without spoilers, I've seen opinions on both sides of people kind of confused with the ending of the game, people stoked about it, and we're going to be in this weird place where, this isn't the complete original game, and we don't know when the next one's coming, so I don't know. It's going to be an interesting conversation when that day comes, but like you said, it's tough to buy right now, so it's going to be interesting to see how quickly those numbers climb in terms of sales and shipped. We'll see. Next up, new details for Call of Duty 2020 were provided by Bloomberg. That's another thing, if you didn't know. Jason Schreier is now with Bloomberg. We talked about him leaving Kotaku last week, and it seemed like he might be going to the Washington Post. A couple of days later, he revealed he's joining Bloomberg's team, so they just finished breaking that PlayStation 5 report. Now they have Jason Schreier. I think this next generation, we could see Bloomberg vault itself up to be a primary news source in the video game space for breaking news and, industry inside scoops.
Man, he must have gotten a payday.
Yeah.
And
well maybe just relative to other game journalists, like a payday for a games journalist, but still it's a payday. Yeah. Anyways, he talked about Call of Duty 2020 and provided some updates on it. If you didn't know, and Dom, obviously we've talked about this numerous times, it was said that this was originally going to be Sledgehammer's game. They got moved off the title. The Black Ops team came on, Treyarch. They kind of shifted the Vietnam story happening in the Cold War to be a Black Ops game. And people weren't unsure if this was going to be Black Ops 5, a reboot, what was going to happen, right? Which is weird because this will only be 2 years after Black Ops 4, which kind of takes away their 3-year game cycle. And turns out that, according to Jason Schreier anyways, it is still on track for release. COVID-19 hasn't affected it, thankfully. And even though it's in Black Ops canon, it won't be Black Ops 5 or a reboot. It's actually internally being called Call of Duty Vietnam, and will be taking place during the Cold War era, with the Vietnam War. So that's interesting. So it's not going to be labeled as a Black Ops game, but it's going to be in canon. I wonder if they do like the Call of Duty Vietnam, but above it'll be like a Black Ops story or something. You know what I mean? Because they want to have the Black Ops in the marketing somehow, right? Because it's their most profitable like sub franchise. So I wonder how that's going to work. Unless it is called Call of Duty Black Ops Vietnam, which would even be more odd. Who knows? Yeah. So that's that. I don't know how you feel, Dom, but I'm not surprised that it's still on track for release. You think about the amount of people they have working on these annualized game titles. And I'm assuming that what Activision probably did is shifted a lot of its workforce from other development houses to kind of double down on this, right? It's the best-selling game every year outside of a Rockstar release. So you'd assume that they're just going to make sure that it comes out right, especially with next gen.
Yeah, I guess, man. It seems like they're struggling, or they're, scrambling rather, from the reports we've heard about, like how they're switching studios on stuff and changing scope of games and all this kind of stuff. And now they've only been getting bigger, right? Now they have Warzone to support. They've got these remasters out now. They got a lot going on. And I think I said this a few weeks ago, like you can get on them and say like, oh, it's thrown together at the last minute type stuff that they do, but they put out good shit, man. And it sells well for a reason. So it's kind of impressive. It'd be easy to call it mismanagement from one point of view, potentially, but at the end of the day, it sells like better than anything else every year, so I can only be impressed with what they do there.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, too, is Call of Duty Warzone is free, and they've kind of moved away from the toxic microtransactions, and Activision is a very profitable and large company, so they still want those large profit drivers for their stakeholders, so they're going to want to get an actual retail release out there that people pay for, right? So no surprise there. Speaking of sales, let's hop into these March MPD numbers, as always provided by Matt Piscatello of the MPD Group. Shout out to him. Excellent follow on Twitter. If you haven't yet, go follow him. He's also a huge San Diego Padres fan, so if you're a fan of baseball, he often talks about that as well. I'm not a baseball guy, so it kind of just goes over my head. I just kind of scroll past those tweets, but he's a big baseball guy, so if you love video game sales... What?
I learned at least one thing today. There's a baseball team in San Diego.
Oh, you're even less of a baseball fan than me.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, and obviously Dom's a larger hockey fan than I am, way larger. So next, for Matt Piscatello's numbers, let's go over the top 5 best-selling games for March. Number 5, NBA 2K20. This isn't too surprising considering the NBA season got shut down with COVID, right? So people wanted to get their NBA fix. And the game normally, I don't know if you remember this, Dom, but the game normally hits MPD pretty high around this time because this is when the playoffs would normally start getting into effect. Ramping up to the playoffs is at the end of March. So the fact that it's back in the top sellers is not surprising. Number 4, RE3 Remake. This is interesting because obviously it had pretty mixed critical reception. Did come out at $60. Remember, these are based on dollar sales, not unit sales. Number 3, MLB The Show 20. Note there, it's an exclusive title that's going to be going multi-platform, I believe either next year or the year after. So it hitting number 3 on the MPD charts as an exclusive. I could just imagine this thing's going to be like Madden and NBA where the month it releases, it just dominates, right? Which to me is surprising because I still am of the mind, and obviously statistics show that baseball is on a downward trajectory in terms of popularity in the United States. The NFL is obviously huge and it continues to be huge, and NBA has been growing over the last 2 decades, whereas MLB has been dropping, but that fan base is still strong as ever. Number 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We'd both assume that this is A, because it's Call of Duty, and B, the Warzone bump, right? People downloading the free game being like, oh, I got the itch for just a regular Call of Duty multiplayer, I'm going to buy it. So that's that. And number 1, and it's not even counting digital sales, is Assassin's Creed, Freudian slip, Animal Crossing New Horizons. I saw the AC and my heart went to Assassin's Creed because I've written down it's AC NH. Yeah, sorry.
Wait a minute, did I miss an Assassin's Creed game this month? Shit.
So yeah, Animal Crossing New Horizons dominates. This isn't surprising. We kind of all assumed this would happen. It's the game of quarantine. Everybody kind of jumped on the bus with that game. It's really impressive for it to be number 1 without including digital sales. I imagine if you included digital sales, there'd be an even larger gap between it and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Are you surprised by this top 5 at all, Dom? Do you think maybe RE3 you expected to be higher on the list or lower? And AC, I'm assuming you also thought was going to dominate?
I mean, especially when I would have expected RE3 to be maybe a bit higher. I mean, it's multi-platform, right? So, and then is not Assassin's Creed. Animal Crossing is Switch exclusive, and half the sales you're not counting anyway. So
yeah,
that's especially impressive. Not that, and I don't think it's not art. Resident Evil isn't unimpressive. It just seems maybe it could have been a bit higher, but more or less it's I guess close to what you'd expect.
What's an interesting case of like economics and marketing and stuff of like, would this game have gone higher in dollar sales if it came out at 40 instead of 60? Because so many people were kind of pushed away from purchasing it now because they heard 6-hour gameplay time, $60 purchase. I don't know if I'm getting the most bang for my buck. And that could have deterred a lot of people. So it'd be interesting, like, if it came out at 40, more people might have bought it instead of taking a pass until it was on sale. I wonder where it would have netted out at, right? Losing $20 per sale, but having more sales on the back end. We'll never know, obviously, but just an interesting thought exercise. Next up, Call of Duty Modern Warfare became the best-selling game of the year, and Animal Crossing entered at number 2. So no surprise there. Call of Duty is taking the lead at the number 1 spot. There hasn't been a really huge release, I guess, outside of like Doom Eternal, which for the record came in at number 6 for March, not including digital.
I was gonna ask, like, wait a minute, there's something missing here.
Yeah, Doom Eternal came in at number 6, not including digital. So that's interesting there as well. Probably would have netted higher in the top 5, I assume. Next up, how keep wanting to say Assassin's Creed. Jesus Christ. I need to start writing Animal Crossing instead of AC. Animal Crossing New Horizons had the 3rd highest launch month for physical unit sales in Nintendo's history ever. Wow. And it's actually the only 2 that are higher than it are both Super Smash Brothers games, which means that Animal Crossing New Horizons had a bigger launch than any Mario or Zelda game ever. The Mario one's actually more surprising. People forget, they're kind of blinded by Breath of the Wild. Zelda's never really sold really well. It's never touched Mario's numbers. Breath of the Wild is kind of the exception, not the rule there. But yeah, Animal Crossing coming out and just dominating. Like having a better launch of physical and unit sales for a Animal Crossing game to beat Mario. That's kind of crazy.
They
and
definitely they hit something right, with their marketing for this game.
Very lucky timing.
Yeah, great timing for them. They just went super heavy on the commercials. I still see New Horizons commercials like several times a day, right? I don't watch that much TV either. But yeah, they went super heavy on the marketing, and then somehow they played the social media game well. I don't know how, like, you can do it the right way or the wrong way, and a lot of times it's mostly out of your control, right? The wrong way being Mass Effect Andromeda, where you just get skewered and you're kind of sitting there like, why are there all these memes about our facial animations? and that ruins the game's sales, or not ruins, but that kind of thing. Whereas Animal Crossing was like, it was just kind of like all over social media in a more positive way. And I think, the timing of everyone being stuck at home played into that too. But it was like striking, like, not lightning in a bottle, because like it's a great game and it's cool and people love it, but just a lot of things lined up really well for Animal Crossing this time.
Well, and then the free publicity from celebrities that they didn't even have to pay. Like, so you have Chrissy Teigen, who's constantly talking about Animal Crossing, right? She has a huge Twitter following. Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
Yeah, it list goes on and on. Today, the day we're recording this, it was Elijah Wood was trending on Twitter because he saw that somebody posted that they had high turnip prices, and he asked them if he could visit their island to sell his turnips, and they freaked out because it's like, Elijah Wood is coming to my dang island. So just all this free publicity, right? And it is a solid game. It has its issues, but I don't think they deter from the experience at all. They recently had, which we're not going to get into on the news segment, but they recently posted like a roadmap for the game of all these events that are coming up. There's Earth Day, which started today, so you definitely want to log in and check it out. They introduced bushes and hedges and stuff for more decorating options. I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head. There's like a wedding event that's going to happen where you have to help these like 2 llama villagers get married, which is pretty cute. There's like a lot of stuff for like the next 2 months. And if they can keep this track record up, we don't think about it like this, but Animal Crossing will probably be Nintendo's biggest entry into the games as a service model and their most successful, because naturally the way Animal Crossing is set up as a game is it has updated events throughout the year, right? That's just how it's been since the GameCube and 64. So it is kind of naturally a games as a service game, and they have a built-in marketing cycle for it, right? So that's pretty cool.
The egg stuff, man. All the egg stuff was whack.
Well, you have to remember that probably wasn't their plan to be the first event, because this game was originally slated to come out at the end of last year. Remember, and it got delayed. So then they had to release it, and people have talked about they think it's actually a purposeful troll event. That it's not meant to be jolly and happy, that you're kind of meant to get annoyed by the bunny character. Because if you like compare him to other people who visit your island for events, there's just some certain weird things that happen. Oh, another thing in the updates is you now have this guy who comes to your island ever so often, Dom, in a boat, and he sells you art, but he can either sell you counterfeit or real art, and you kind of have to look at it and tell if you think it's real or not, and then you buy it, and there's a new art section in the museum, so you can have like art and stuff.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, how in the hell would you know if it's counterfeit or not? I know art is art when you're looking at it, but
they're based off of real paintings, like famous paintings.
Oh, okay.
Like Starry Night and all that stuff.
Okay.
So like you can pull up an image on Google and be like, "What's the difference here? This is weird."
Yeah. So when you take it to Blathers, he'll be like, this is garbage. I don't want it. Or something.
Yeah. Like an example, so there's like the Anatomy of Man image, you know what I'm talking about, where he's like the 4 arms and the 4 legs, and on the fake one, like the feet are turned around like the wrong directions. It's kind of like just paying attention to stuff. It's just a really cool, neat event. So love an Animal Crossing. Anyways, let's get into this Xbox news. A ton of stuff. So this comes by way of Phil Spencer, Windows Central, IGN, and Xbox Game Pass. A lot of stuff to go through. We have 4 things. Well, actually 3 things I want to tackle specifically. Which one do you want to go to first? We have Xbox Rumor Roundup, Quick Hits, and Phil Spencer's Twitter response.
I guess let's start with the rumors, because I always hate rumors. I'm always like, who cares?
Okay,
that's not real.
Well, with this, so was posted by Windows Central, and it was taking all of the rumors that are happening and taking the ones that were substantiated. So these rumors that weren't just some random dude on 4chan. It's like, okay, maybe this random dude on 4chan posted it, but then it was like kind of corroborated by Eurogamer, but then there was a reset error. Like, these have some weight to them. They're not just X dude, right, that said this stuff. So the first one, the long-rumored Lockhart, will be the 4 teraflop entry into next gen, will replace the Xbox One X, which seems to be getting phased out with reduced prices, etc. So this is something we didn't talk about, but the Cyberpunk custom console, there's already only 45,000 units being made, and they stated it was going to be the last limited edition Xbox One X ever being sold, right? And then we also saw the sales price for the Xbox One X getting drastically reduced and being on sale way more often than it has been. So there has been speculation that they're actually phasing that out because they don't want a $300 to $400 console when they're going to try to have this lesser or cheaper SKU, right? There's no point to have the Xbox One X and then this Lockhart. And people were asking, well, what's the point of having a 4 teraflop Xbox that's supposedly next gen when that's less teraflops than the Xbox One X?
Are you going to take this one?
Yeah, well, so the thing is that it'll have the NVMe loading speeds, the slight ray tracing, and the SSD, right? So all of those make it a more formidable next-gen console than the Xbox One X.
Yeah.
And if you actually look at it, it can produce at higher powers and performance speeds than the Xbox One X because of that stuff.
Yeah, and right, the CPU should be on par with the Series X, to whatever extent, right? So
yeah,
the way I perceived it, in my limited technical understanding of specs, but was this is basically an Xbox One X in every way, an Xbox Series X in every way except for like pure graphical output. So your frame rate, textures, resolutions wouldn't be as high, but like actual programming and type processing power and load speeds and all the other features and architecture would be on par. So like, design wise, there won't ever be a game that couldn't play on this thing that could on Series X. It just will be at a lower resolution or lower frame rate kind of a thing.
Yeah, you'll still see a generational leap from your current console if you don't have the Xbox One X, and even from the Xbox One X, you still will see a leap in performance. Not that to the Series X, but yeah, you're correct. So yeah, people just like, oh, but if it's less powerful, then it's not next gen. That's not exactly how it works. The biggest negative, I assume, will probably be that if they want the price to be lower, it'll be 500 gig SSD as opposed to 1 terabyte, right? That's my other assumption to cut down the price. So there's that. Next up, a new Xbox wireless headset has reportedly been in the works as well. If you didn't know, the last Xbox headset that they've released was in 2013 or 14, sorry, with the launch of the Xbox One the previous year. So this would be their first next headset. It's supposed to be wireless and work through Bluetooth. It's kind of, from what they're saying, they want to have their own established in-house headset that people can turn to without having to go to the name's escaping me. What's a really
Mad Cats?
Not Mad Cats, but the headsets that everyone buys with the Turtle Beaches and then the Astros and all that stuff. Yeah. So they kind of want to have their own thing. That's not surprising either. They want it to work with like everything, so it'll probably be a Bluetooth headset. If it's wireless, it'll be a Bluetooth headset. Next up, do you have anything to say about the headset, Dom? Sorry. No, it's a headset.
Yep. Sounds cool.
Yeah. Lockhart is rumored to be in the take-home phase, where employees are taking it home and testing it. If that matches up with Xbox Series X timeline, which I'll explain real quickly, about 2 weeks before we saw the Xbox Series X at the Game Awards, if you remember, Phil Spencer tweeted that he took the Series X home and was playing games on it. So about 2 weeks later, we saw the reveal. So if that timeline sticks with this, the May reveal lines up. And you're like, well, May reveal? What are you talking about, May reveal, Jared? What is this May reveal? Well, speaking of that May reveal, the idea of Xbox holding a May reveal event, which includes reveals of first-party games, which will be the headset, the Series S, which is Lockhart, and a couple of titles, which have been rumored to be Fable and Halo Infinite, is going to go alongside a traditional E3 adjacent blowout event that's heavily reported in rumor circles. So essentially what they're saying is that there's going to be when all this happened, this coronavirus stuff took place, Xbox decided that instead of doing their big E3 blowout with everything in it, that this gave them the opportunity to do a May event where they focus on, supposedly Project Lockhart, but showing a lot of their own personal first-party titles and features and all that stuff. And then that the June event would be a blowout of games like third-party and other first-party stuff that they haven't shown yet. So that's the rumor. To go along with this, it's likely that it'll be in the first half of May. The rumors of the PS5 stuff is the end of May, but that's less corroborated than this Xbox stuff. This 2 event thing has been all over the internet. Almost everybody's like, oh yeah, for sure. Which is interesting. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Them doing one thing that's more insular and then doing another thing that's more of a traditional blowout.
Yeah, I could see that. Because there was something that we brought up, I think, last week where Phil said, every industry event in the next year or something, they plan on showing new games, right?
Yeah, I believe his quote was, there's not an event we see coming up where we won't be showing something new.
Yeah, so that's probably one of these things is that, right? Like a June or something later, but definitely this makes sense of they're going to do their own thing in one of these dates, right? Late May or whatever. That seems like it's about time, right? Because May and June is when we expect to start seeing the next gen games, right? Especially, actually, yeah, from both Microsoft and PlayStation. This makes sense. So yeah, I could see them doing, their own kind of event where they're like, yo guys, Fable, whatever the next numbered Fable game would be, and so on, right?
Oh, it'll be a reboot, I'd assume, right? At this point, they wouldn't do Fable 4. It's been so long. They just do Fable, yeah.
Yeah.
My idea is this, and I don't know if you would agree with me or not. So I do think they still want to have some splashes. We're going forward with the idea that this is true, right? There's going to be a May event and a June event. Put that in your mind. My assumption would be that at this May event, they want to tease a lot of stuff, show off some stuff, maybe reveal some stuff, but go deeper at the big event in June, right? So here's what I'd assume I wouldn't be surprised to see. We get a blowout on Halo Infinite because that is their launch title, right? That's their focus. We get a deep gameplay dive. We get all this stuff, features, the whole shebang, right? We see the Lockhart. We see the headset, yada, 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 yada. And I think in that we see the reveal of Fable, maybe a tease of gameplay, right? But it's a reveal. It ends with full gameplay reveal at our June event, right? Because they're gonna market the next event after this one if that's how it works, right? They want to lead into it, and then here's Forza. I think we have the highest chance of seeing their next gen racing game in Halo Infinite the most, and then I think some of the other stuff will be teased and then go in deeper at that big event, because you don't want to show off all of that stuff at your own event and then just have a third party press conference, highlight reel. I think they'll tease some stuff at that May event and then showcase it at the June event. What do you think?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And they've done things like that before, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of it. Was it Fallout 4 or something where
Fallout 4 was opposite because Bethesda showed it off first, and then they said we'll show you more Xbox's thing.
Yeah, so a little different because it's different publisher.
Or opposite. I don't remember. Yeah. It was one or the other. One
but,
led into the other between those two. Yeah.
Similar kind of idea where they announced something and showed a tiny bit, but then try to get you excited for the next event where they're like, oh, we're gonna really show you what's going on with this at this event.
A good example, actually. Sorry to interrupt you. The Fallen Order. Remember, EA showed that, and then they're like, we'll show you the full gameplay demo at Microsoft's thing.
There you go.
And then we saw it. Yeah. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Halo is the focus of that May event, I guess is the gist of it, because that is their big launch title and they want to sell people on and be like, yo, Halo's back, right? So I wouldn't expect to see a full dive on everything. If I had to guarantee one thing we for sure will see if that May event exists is Halo Infinite.
Yeah. I'm excited for that because I feel like, and we've talked about this, everyone has talked about this before, but Halo Infinite is going to be this has got to be a big deal, right? And they know that, they've known that, because the only criticisms people could have possibly levied at Halo 5 and Gears of War 5, Gears of War 4. Like, these are all good games, but like they don't necessarily like do anything crazy and new or blow anyone's socks off, more than usual. And like, and this sounds hypercritical, but like maybe those franchises have gotten a bit stale or something like that. Like, that's not my thoughts necessarily, but especially with Gears 5, that game is fucking sweet. But
at the risk of sounding biased too, I do think that there's this negative shadow over Xbox to where I think because Gears and Halo have been their only huge AAA exclusives, people are way more critical on them than PlayStation's. Now, I'm not saying PlayStation's games aren't great. That's not, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. Like, because they're their only things, they're way more critical and nitpicky. Whereas with PlayStation, a Days Gone can come out. I mean, I guess that's a bad example, but like, I guess Horizon Zero Dawn. I wouldn't put Horizon Zero Dawn in the same place as Last of Us or God of War, right? Horizon Zero Dawn, great game, not to that extent, from what I've seen, anyways. If Horizon Zero Dawn came out on Xbox, I don't know if it would have got the same praise it got. But it came out on PlayStation. There's already a track record there, so I think people are not less critical, but like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I hope that comes across clearly of like, I do think because Gears and Halo are their only big boys, that they kind of get swept away a lot easier because it's like, oh, just another Gears or Halo, and it diminishes how good or bad the game is, period. I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely some publisher like bias in there. Not bias might even be strong, but like preconception. But it also goes both ways, right? Because I think we saw the similar effect of Days Gone was a great example of that, where it wasn't quite as good as God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn and Spider-Man. It was still great though, but it just wasn't those games. So it kind of like, I think, got a bump down critically because of what preceded it from Sony's catalog. So it was like, ugh, it kind of got that effect.
Yeah.
Which I think, maybe Xbox games a little bit of that too. But just for those two franchises, it seems like they've not done anything super different in a while. Which I guess was the original point, was like, I think Halo Infinite, is going to be that. Like, I think, and they've known this, right? They know, like, this isn't a surprise. And there's a reason it's not Halo 6, right? Like, I think it's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be like, and this is their launch game, right? They're looking at this like, this is our Breath of the Wild kind of a thing, right? Like, I think it's going to be sweet. And we haven't really seen much of anything from it, which is more exciting too, because it's not that far away, right? So I think it's going to be a big deal.
And it's a new engine, the Slipspace engine. I'm excited to see what that does. And because they have this strong studio now, I wonder if there's another studio using the Slipspace engine, right? I wonder if the initiatives, like, what engine are they using? It might have been reported they're using Unreal 4. I don't know, but I wonder if the tools, right, are going to be passed around from studio to studio because they are helping each other. And to the point of like Gears and Halo, I think I was coming from it more of a perspective of like public opinion, because Halo 5 and Gears 5 reviewed pretty well.
Yeah, good point.
Much better than Days Gone. And Days Gone is a weird case too, because it's like it reviewed poorly. I think it ended up in the 60 somethings in Metacritic, but fans loved it. Like, there's a strong core of people who love that game. Very odd. I hope I didn't come off too biased there, but it has been something I noticed of the funny thing too with Halo 5 is that the campaign was much maligned, but a lot of people felt it was the best multiplayer the series had ever seen, which is crazy because the campaign was probably one of the more divisive, if not the most divisive campaign in the series. Anyways, I'm with you. I'm excited for Infinite, and I do think it's going to showcase some stuff we didn't even think that were possible in a Halo game, because we've kind of been taught a certain pattern of what we should expect from that franchise. And I think doing something new could really revitalize it in a real meaningful way. Really quick, I want to talk to you. This isn't in the rundown, but something I heard on a podcast that I didn't think about. The smart delivery stuff for Xbox, right? Of like, you buy one game and you get the best version of it, or the best version for the console you're on, right? Remember the problem Jordan used to have where he's like, how come I'm downloading these damn 4K texture packs and I don't have a 4K?
Right.
With smart delivery, that's not the case. You won't have to download that stuff, which is cool, because I guarantee you the version of Halo Infinite that runs on the Lockhart won't be the same as Series X. So it having 500 terabytes of storage won't, it kind of might function closely because it's going to be smaller file sizes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So part of what smart delivery is that hasn't really been talked about much because it's not necessarily a sexy feature is what you're saying, that it basically the Xbox environment is able to distinguish between what console you have, and the patches are appropriate to that. So there's really different versions horizontally of the game. It's not just like a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah.
It's like an A point B or whatever.
So you don't have to like download stuff that's unnecessary, right, to your console, which is cool. Like we get the really nice shiny version on the Series X, but people on the 1S or 1X don't have to download unnecessary stuff. That's cool. Next up, excuse me, you want to do quick hits or Phil Spencer's Twitter response?
Let's go with Phil. Uncle Phil.
Okay, so this random dude on Twitter named Woggerman1974. Mm-hmm. So if that's his birth year, I guess he'd be what, 46?
84 or 94?
74.
Oh, 74.
Yeah. 46?
20 years older than me, so 46, yeah.
Yeah. You were born in 94?
Yes.
That's crazy. I mean, I was born in 91, and not too far behind, but... So he asked Phil Spencer on Twitter, and real quick, this is why I love Phil Spencer, because he's real candid and open, and he's so relatable. Huh?
He just replied.
He just replied, exactly. Yeah, and we've talked about how awesome Phil Spencer is. Like, he's the stepdad you'd want if you had to have a stepdad.
Oh, jeez. Well, that's uncomfortable.
Hey, man. It happens. People get divorced. Anyways, he asked, hey, Xbox P3, how are you feeling about the eventual reveals of new games and info on the Series X later this year? How is planning going? There are definitely a lot of hungry fans out there. You're like, oh, cool. This is a tweet that Phil Spencer would probably see, and like, PR is probably like, don't reply to this and yada, 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 or other companies or whatever. And he was just like, hey, responded, reviewed plans yesterday for continued sharing through launch. The team is doing great work and adapting. I've never been more excited about Xbox plans. We've heard you. You want transparency, authenticity. We plan to keep showing that way. The next step is not too much of a wait. And in little brackets, he put games. So this is cool. Obviously, this is not confirmation of anything, but saying that it's not too much of a wait. I think it's kind of him winking at like everyone has heard about this May event. Because I think if it was happening in June, I wouldn't tweet out that not too much of a wait if it was 2 months away. I don't know. It's maybe me reading too much into it, obviously. But I just like that he responded. He didn't have to. You know what I mean? But one thing Xbox has been is open and transparent and authentic. And I think that's the weirdest thing is that PlayStation is obviously hugely popular. The console, PS4 has done tremendously well, but Jim Ryan is not going to be responding to people on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So, what did you think about this reply? Obviously, he's confident in his team, and what do you get out of the not too much of a wait in terms of announcement?
I mean, what we expect, right? Well, probably in 2, 3, 4, couple weeks, we'll hear, we're doing an event on this date, which will be even a couple more weeks beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And, we're going to showcase some games from Xbox Game Studios or something like that, right? And like, oh shit. All right, let's go.
And he's smart. He knows that like by replying and saying not too much of a wait, there's going to be a built-in level of expectation, right? Like Phil knows that. So he knows like, I'll respond to somebody asking about stuff closer to when we're doing it, so I could say it's closer to when we're doing it, right? Like, I guarantee you, the reason he replied to this, obviously because he wanted to, be transparent, but I guarantee you it was like, they finally probably nailed down when the event is happening, right? And they're like, okay, everything's good. Now I can tease stuff. So that's what I read the most out of this is like, okay, everything's set. Now he's, comfortable enough to like tease,
Yeah, you don't go replying to people on Twitter no, it's not a promise, but saying things that are going to happen unless you're sure of it, right? So, and you assume it's been delayed or whatever, plans had changed in the past month. But now, like you're saying, it's probably like, oh, okay, the new plan or whatever, the new or not, the plan is now pretty locked in, and he can go out and try to get people excited on Twitter.
Yeah, I just think it's cool that he replied, man. Like, imagine that dude. He like was like, I'm sending this out into the ether of Twitter. He's probably not going to respond, and then he responded. He's like, oh my god, Phil Spencer responded. You know, because when you sit back and think about like the position Phil Spencer holds, like he's very relatable, but like he's the head of gaming for one of the most profitable companies in the world. You know what I mean? Like Microsoft is worth so much money, and he is in charge of their entire gaming division, and he just looks like a dude you can have a conversation with, like at a cafe or a bar or something. It's so cool. Lastly, the required reading for the week. I wasn't able to fit this in because we had so much to talk about. Jez Corden over at Windows Central, who's the one that put up the article about the rumor roundup that we talked about earlier. He had another thing where he talked to, I'll get to the quick hits after this. I forgot about the quick hits. He put up an interview where he talked to Xbox first-party devs and asked them about the Series X and what it means for their games. And there's takeaways from like all of the major studios. So it's a really good read. Obviously, it's going to be biased because it's their console they're working on, so take that with a grain of salt. But developers are developers, and they're going to tell you what they're most excited for, which should get you excited as a consumer of like, if they are having all of these things that are helping them out, imagine the games we're going to get on the back end of that. So that's really cool. And one of them I actually threw into the quick hits. So the two quick hits I have for Xbox. One, it was announced today that Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming to Xbox Game Pass on May 7th.
Oh, yeah.
Which is huge. Cool. Same day, GTA 5's leaving. So you'd be like, oh, it's a bummer GTA 5's leaving. Smart on Xbox to be like, yeah, we're losing one Rockstar title, but we're putting their newest title on there. A huge get, right? Because it losing GTA 5 is pretty damning, and it's a tough loss because it's a huge game for the platform. But replacing it with Red Dead Redemption 2, it's like, hell yeah. Especially now where people are going to have a harder time committing to $60 purchases, right? It's like, oh, I can play Red Dead on Game Pass. So,
yeah, I think there's apparently something to the... I guess they've been doing it with video streaming for a while now. There's something to... It's fine that things come and go, right? Netflix has always been doing that, right? PlayStation started doing that. But yeah, I think it's fine. Like GTA was on there for like a year at least. Something like that.
Oh, on Game Pass?
Yeah.
I think 2 years.
Yeah, a long time. So actually, that's a really long time. But I think like that, it's worth... it's still worth it being there, even though it's potentially not permanent. A lot of people are going to play through, Red Dead 2 when it's on Game Pass in like the 1 or 2 years that it's on the service, or maybe it stays on the service forever, But there's something to that, I guess.
Yeah, and to me, this reads as, if I was being cynical, Rockstar wants to get GTA 5 off of that service so they can probably have a reason for people to buy it again on next-gen consoles. You know what I mean? Like, get off of the streaming stuff and try to resell it again. Who knows? Anyways, and the last thing, this is part of that interview I just talked about as a required reading. The link will be in the description if you're watching on YouTube. The Coalition's technical director, Mike Rayner, says that Gears 5's loads are 4 times quicker on the Xbox Series X than Xbox One without a single change to the game's code. That's pretty dope. So basically, that's like there was no work implemented in the game loads 4 times quicker. And Gears 5 is like a graphical showpiece for the platform, right? It's like a very beautiful game. It pushes a lot to the platform. So for it to load 4 times quicker is really dope. Without a change to the game's code, that's awesome for me to hear, because the first party devs and maybe some of the closer second and third party devs are going to want to work to get it running optimally and improve their games. But there's going to be other people who just want to get their game onto next-gen platforms. And if their games can receive performance enhances without doing anything to the actual game, that's going to be huge, because then it gives them a bigger reason to push it to the new platform because there's less work involved, right? So indie devs and other people are like, I can push my game to the next-gen console and I don't have to put any work in and I get performance boosts, right? That's pretty cool.
This is what's exciting about SSDs, right? Because you take a computer, clone the hard drive to an SSD and swap them out, and all of a sudden you didn't change anything to any of the software, than any of the OS or nothing, right? But all your shit's way, way faster, right?
Yep.
So that's what's exciting about this, is this one easy hardware change, and that's just, even just the drive. And the new console, it's all the thank you, Mark Cerny, for helping teach us some of this, I guess. It's all like the connections between the drive and the other parts of the motherboard or whatever else, right? That you wouldn't get from just swapping just the drive. The new console, you're going to get a faster drive and faster connections. So yeah, this is what's exciting about it, this generation, because we haven't seen this in a while, right? We have this kind of an emphasis put on the load speeds and the data transfer. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, and I want to see how fast they can get the loading times if they optimize, right? I would like to see
way better, I bet.
Yeah, because this is without changing the game's code, and obviously as a first-party studio, the Coalition can optimize the hell out of it. That's why the Spider-Man load times are so impressive in that weird wonky video we saw, right? We haven't seen the official release of it, but that game loads exceptionally fast because of the transfer speed of the SSD and the PS5, and because it's a first-party studio, well, technically now a first-party studio, Insomniac, optimizing the hell out of it. I want to see with the PlayStation and the Xbox of what's optimized versus not optimized, because both are important. Because the optimized stuff, like I said, the first parties are going to take advantage of that, right? So Uncharted 5 or whatever's next for Naughty Dog, and Gear 6 or whatever, those are going to be pushing the top end of what you can optimize with the SSD loading times. And then we also want to see, without changing code or anything, how is Days Gone. I guess Days Gone is a first party title. I'm trying to think of something else. Persona 6 optimized, and Cuphead 2, right? I want to see the differences there because they're both going to see improvements, and they both have their advantages. So that's really cool. I definitely suggest reading that article because there's some really fascinating stuff about what the Series X can do. Anyways, that's it for this week's news. Let's talk about what we've been playing. Animal Crossing for me, obviously, as always. I'll tell you about some of my improvements real quick, Dom. So I've been terraforming my island a whole bunch. Basically, the way I want my island to function is you have the image of a Animal Crossing island in your head, okay?
Of course.
A big square, or
as I often do most parts of the day.
So my city, there's a river that runs from the bottom middle of my island to the right of the airport up, and then it cut left in the middle of the island, and then it went up and right on the top right of the island, right? So my island is kind of cut into 3 pieces: top left, bottom right, or right. So the bottom left, I've turned completely into a city. I used the custom patterns to make roads, and I used fences and all of my villagers' buildings and my stores and stuff. So it's like a little town area. Still working on moving buildings and getting it done. I don't time travel, and you can only move buildings once a day, right? So it's taking some time for me because I kind of don't want to cheat. But once it's all done, I want you to come visit because it's really dope. The right of my island, I had an idea for a nature trail forest area. So the pine trees, because there's the regular trees and there's the pine trees.
Yep.
So I just have a bunch of pine trees. I have a secondary level where you walk up a ramp, and it's completely blocked off by rope fencing and pine trees to make it look like a nature, not a nature reserve, but I guess a nature reserve, like a park, right? Like a national park that's kind of protected. And I want to do a nature trail and a lake and stuff in there. So I'm working on that, which is pretty cool. And then the top left is my flower garden and orchard and all that stuff. So I'm working on all of that. Really fun playing the turnip market, getting my money, having a blast. What else? Oh, obviously Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm about 15 hours in. That's loosely halfway through. Depending on how slow or quick you go, the game's between 30 and 40 hours. So I'm loosely halfway through the game. I'll give my... Actually, before I give my opinions, since you haven't talked about it at all, and you said you started it, shoot.
Yeah, so I'm 6 hours in, and I mentioned before. It's a really cool game. I'll start with a few things. So they do the I guess it's just the Japanese thing where the dialogue between the characters, there's a lot of huh? What? And those I don't know how you explain that, but it's kind of funny. And they do a lot of fucking moves.
In voice acting, those noises are called efforts, but I don't know what the actual term is in game for dialogue, but yeah.
And that stuff's always just I don't know, it just makes me laugh a little bit. But it's charming. I'm like, okay, that's funny. Like Tifa says something and Cloud just goes, ah, and makes like a gesture. And I'm like, what a weird thing to...
It's a little Kingdom Heartsy. A little Kingdom Heartsy.
Yeah. But like the actual content and the subject matter makes way more sense than Kingdom Hearts. So that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm still trying to really get a handle on the combat. It's difficult so far. I think I just got to get used to it.
Can I give you a tip?
Yeah.
So
please.
my biggest problem going into this game was I was playing it like Dark Souls or any third-person action adventure game, and by that I mean
dodging.
I was dodging and I was only using Cloud. And the biggest thing with this game is you can't only use Cloud. Like it's not gonna work. There comes points in this game where like doing that you actively are gonna. The first time I ran into this was this isn't a spoiler, but like the big dog boss thing. Well, not big.
Yeah.
Like the dog boss, right?
I had him too. He sucked.
In Sector 7.
Yeah.
He's like the first point of like, yo, change how you're playing this game or else it's not going to be a good time for you. Tifa, you know her unbridled strength or whatever, the buff that she has?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that ability, what I've learned is that when you get into battle and she's with you, you want to get her 2 bars up and use it twice. Like build up the 2 bars, use those twice, and then she's way stronger. Because early in the game, I was like, Tifa's kind of weak. Like, I don't like using her. I'd rather use Barret and Cloud because she just doesn't seem like she's doing much. Man. By doing those 2 buffs, she becomes super strong. And the other thing I would say is that the way I play, and obviously you're going to find your own strategy that I find works, is I go in early with Cloud, and then I switch to all the other characters and let Cloud do his own thing, but use his abilities when his ATB fills up. And just kind of not necessarily super focus on Cloud and kind of, divvy up your attention between the characters. Another thing, do you know that if you block in Punisher mode, you counter moves?
Oh, no, okay. Maybe.
So there's going to be a boss you run into the game that you literally can't beat unless you do this. Like, literally can't beat. I'm not using that figuratively. Like, you won't be able to beat the guy. So when you're in Punisher mode, you move slowly. If you block and someone attacks you, it's even way easier than Dark Souls. It auto parries. Like, it auto counters for you.
So
you're able to unleash.
So can you hold block, basically?
And then counter them. Yes. Well, you counter them, and then you obviously want to press square and like do your own moves.
Sure. Okay.
And not every move is counterable. Like physical attacks are counterable. So if they come at you with like a grenade or like a fire attack or some weird stuff, like you can obviously block that, right? It's the physical attacks you can block. So it's like really good against the dogs and like the animals or people who fight hand to hand. And that's the thing is I went into this like, I can mash square and get away with stuff and then just use Braver and Focus Thrust. That's the other thing. Focus Thrust, I don't know if you read that ability. And the reason I'm saying this stuff, not because I don't think you did, but I messed up with this stuff. I didn't pay attention enough. Focus Thrust like builds up their staggered bar really quick. So by using that move and not Braver, you can build up their bar. Like Braver is the move you want to use when they're staggered. Focus Thrust is the one you want to use to get them staggered.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, because I've been mostly using Braver when it comes up, especially when they're up in the air. But okay, that's good to know. But yeah, that dog, man, I must have took me 10 tries because I'm like, I don't know what to do because like you can't dodge him when he's coming at you with like half of his attacks. You can't dodge.
Yeah,
one of them, his like tail whip or whatever, you could backwards dodge and you could get out of it. But a lot of the times, like he's gonna hit you, and that's just it. And when you block, it only, absorbs like half the damage or whatever the fuck it was. And I was just like, I don't get this. It just wasn't clicking. And eventually
I got another question for you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Are you using your spells?
Yeah, because what I ended up doing for him was I ended up having Assess. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the status check on this dog. And, he's weak to Blizzard. Okay. Start shooting him with ice spells. And that doesn't really do much of anything. His stagger starts to go up somewhat. But that didn't end up doing it for me. What I ended up doing, maybe wasn't the best way, but was just like going into Punisher mode and getting him kind of pinned and just building up his stagger as fast as I possibly could, right? Just eating a little bit of damage, but just to get him down. Because when I tried to draw out the fight, like I might in Dark Souls, and try to dodge and like use heals or whatever, like it just wasn't working. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go at him fast and hard and just try to get him staggered, and that ended up working. But
So
yeah, I don't know.
I was talking about in general, like generally in fighting, so you use spells quite often. So
Yeah.
okay, because obviously they upgrade, right? The spells upgrade. So fire turns into Fyra, Cura turns into Cura, and so on and so forth. You want to upgrade those as much as possible. The point you're in the game, you at least want to get them to the second level, which is they end with an A. So Cura turns into Cura, Fire turns into Fyra. If you have gotten the barrier materia yet, I don't know when you get that in the game. You want to get that and equip it and upgrade it as quick as possible, because barrier is essentially, it puts a shield on you. So you use it, you click it, and then you get to put a shield on you or somebody in your party. And then the upgrade for it is a magic shield. So then you get to choose, like, if you're fighting a magical enemy, you can put a magic shield on yourself, right? And it kind of helps you out a lot.
Yeah.
The deadly dodge materia is really good too. I don't know if you've read that one. So basically, if you roll into a fight, like literally roll into a fight, you get damage bonuses from dodging attacks. So you would dodge and then attack right afterwards, and you get damage bonuses. So if you are somebody, obviously, like us, who plays a lot of Rem games, and you're used to dodging attacks, it's like built into the way you play, so might as well get a boost from it, right?
Okay, because I think I let Tifa have that one. But, I mean, it's just a learning curve, because I do really think that it's cool what they've done with the combat. It's just different. I'm getting used to it, but...
I'm way better now than I was at the beginning. I was in your place too. I'm just trying to give you some tips. That way your learning curve is a lot better than mine.
Yeah. But like ultimately it's cool because it's a different type of combat. Like you can't really compare it to any one game, just the combat, right? Because it takes
people are saying Kingdom Hearts 3, and I don't think it's close. Like it has like light elements, but it's completely different.
Maybe Kingdom Hearts 3 on the hardest difficulty, because that game, all you had to do is just push X over and over.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's like you can feel it has like strong influence from a turn-based game, which this is what the remake is of course. But then it has, it's kind of, I would even say it's turn-based at its core, because and what makes me say that is like the literal fact that you can't just use a potion. You know what I mean? You can't just do anything except push square. That's the only thing you can always do, right? And I guess move. But yeah, you have to build up your ATB or whatever, which is more or less like taking turns. Like you have to go in and hit to build that up and back up. So it's kind of like a turn in a sense before you can use a potion, use a spell, whatever.
That's why having a cure material on every one of your members is key, because you never know when one person's going to need a heal, but you don't have the ATB in your meter to heal yourself.
Yeah.
So
someone else might. Yeah.
Also, the ice spells, from what I've learned, are ass unless you're fighting an enemy that doesn't move at all. Because the way it works is it shoots at an icicle, and then they have to remain in that area for it to damage them. So it's like really bad. From what I've read,
I've been pretty much using fire for that, but
which is good. Yeah. Wind and ice are like the worst ones. I use wind on Tifa just because, like, canonically it makes sense to me. Like, she punches and kicks really fast, so she'd be using wind to her advantage. But that's just like a weird intricacy of mine. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm enjoying the combat. It is tough at the beginning, but I do think it is rewarding. Not in the same way a From game is, but I think still it fulfills you. My biggest gripe with the game, and this is partially like a Japanese RPG thing too, is that like they're clearly the superheroes. It's like, oh, there's all of these people that exist in this world that are normal sized, and then everyone else is 2 feet taller than everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I wonder who Avalanche is. Oh, maybe it's the dude with the gun arm and the guy with the sword on his back. Oh my god.
Dude, I can't even tell you. So after you do the first mission, right, you blow up the freaking reactor and you escape. And then you get on this subway train and you're Cloud with this sword that's as big and as wide as you, and then and Barrett, who's an absolute tank with a machine gun arm, is on this train, and they're like, "Oh, we gotta blend in, be cool." What?
How are you gonna blend in? Yeah,
you are clearly the terrorist, and you're scaring people.
I love, by the way, the detail of when Cloud freaks out when he's checking the other room to see who's in it, and he pulls out his sword and he hits the top of the door.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was a really cool detail. I thought it was really cool.
I agree, because it highlights, like that's awesome, because it's kind of making fun of itself in a way of like, Yeah, we know it's kind of silly. It's a giant sword. You would have that problem everywhere, right?
Yeah. So far to you, who's quote unquote, as the Persona fans would say, best girl?
Well, I guess I've seen all three.
You've
But
met Aerith, Tifa, and Jessie so far, I'd assume.
Yeah, Aerith only like gave me a flower, and I haven't seen her since. But
yeah,
I mean, it's weird to me that some amount of people on the internet were upset that Tifa didn't have as big of boobs as she did in the original.
Yeah, because they're still like incredibly large. I'm like, Jesus Christ, they're like,
I can't imagine.
Unrealistic.
It just is. Yeah, that's the
back
most
problems.
Ridiculous complaint I could ever think. But she seems interesting so far. Jessie seems all right, I guess. I'll probably have a more.
Hell.
What?
Jessie is thirsty as hell.
Oh yeah. Which I think
everybody
in
the game's thirsty, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like Cloud is a very good looking dude, and everyone is very aware of it and not afraid to tell him and act as such. It's kind of funny.
Did you do the dart mini game?
No.
So have you left Sector 7 yet?
No, I've done like pretty much all the quests there, as far as I can tell.
So before you leave, the cats and all that. Before you leave, go into the Seventh Heaven bar. Which, fun note, I didn't know that bar wasn't called Seventh Heaven in the original game. It was called that in canon, but on the actual building, it was called something else. It was called like Texas Roadhouse or something. Really weird.
Okay.
Go play the dart game and beat Wedge's score. You get a trophy for it, and the minigame's pretty fun.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's like actual darts. It's like you have to get 301 in the least amount of darts, and I believe the record is 8, so you have to get it in 7. And it's a little bit frustrating when you start, but once you get like, oh, this is how I do it, you'll nail it. Easy. It's fun. Barrett's daughter's really cute. Little girl. Yeah. One of the cutest characters in the game. I'm enjoying it. Obviously, I'm further than you. What I will say is that without spoilers, so you're at the part where you're doing all the side quests, right? Or you finished all of them?
Yeah, I think I've done them all. And now like they're having the where I paused actually earlier today was they're at underneath the bar or whatever, having an avalanche meeting, and I'm just chilling waiting. So.
Okay, so you don't get the dart minigame until after that meeting finishes. So when it finishes, you'll be able to do it. The game starts off a little slow. Like with you, I enjoyed the beginning of it, but it started feeling a little like long in the tooth. The moment you hit, I believe, chapter 4, where it'll be the point when Jessie and you go on a mission. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
The game kicks off from there, and like it starts hitting a really good pace. The worst thing about this game is when you get to the city sections and you have the side quests. So like when you first hit Sector 7, you have the 6 side quests. I enjoyed doing them, and I still enjoyed them later. And they're far and few between, right? So I'm on like chapter 10 or 11, and it's only happened twice. So it's the chapter you're in and then like chapter 8 or 9 or something. They kind of kill the pacing a little bit because it kicks off when you go with Jessie, and it's like boom, 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 boom. And then it's like, oh, now I'm in a town and I have to do some side quests. So it's a little odd in that way. But they are rewarding and they are cool. Like I like the side quests. The pacing is just odd. You're about to hit a really cool part, though. One thing that's odd, too, since we didn't play the original, there's all of the stuff that they added. I assumed it was expanding on stuff. But there's literally characters in this game that didn't exist in the original. So I ran into this character. Once again, going to avoid spoilers to not ruin it for Dom. And I was like, oh, that's a very eccentric, weird character. So I went to go Google him to see, like, first of all, how do you properly pronounce his name? Because I didn't hear it clearly when they said it, right? And it was like, this character is a character in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And it like talked about how he didn't exist in the original game. I was like, oh, that's odd. But then when you think about where he's placed at in the story, I'm like, oh, he was literally created as a bridge between parts. You know what I mean? Because the original Midgar, I think, is like 3 hours in the original game. Whereas this is a 40-hour title, so just put that into perspective of how much they had to extend the game. But yeah, I definitely want to see where we land on this. You said you're, 5 hours in?
Yeah, 5.5 or so, I think. There's a good timer. So
really cool thing. The timer stops after 3 minutes on your pause screen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you pause, right, it will never go past 3 minutes. So like you know how sometimes you have like a conflated gameplay time at the end of a game because like you
Yeah.
left it on a pause screen or something. It
Mhm.
doesn't do that, which is cool. So it's a lot more accurate. Is there anything else you want to say about FF7 Remake before we close out?
No, I'm excited. The story so far is a bit weird, and I'm kind of like, what am I doing? I don't. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'll say.
Yeah.
'Cause so far,
like I
it's kind
said,
of
where
been
you're
like,
about to get to, it jumps off. It's really cool.
I figured.
And it's
Yeah.
a lot more structure. And like, oh, now I get what we're doing.
Yeah.
My last complaint, and this is odd because apparently he's a lot better than he was in the original. It was worse in the original. Barrett's a bit of a caricature, like a bit too much of a caricature for me.
Dude.
It's like,
Yeah. 100%. I just can't. I just can't with that guy right now. Like,
yeah, it's like, oh, really loud, aggressive black guy. Like I'm like, where's the nuance here? And I'm starting to see some of the nuance in the game, but I'm just apparently it was like way more apparent and worse, like troublesome worse in the original. So apparently they like fixed it some, which is good. But yeah, that's it for this week's show. Hopefully we have some more Final Fantasy impressions for the remake next week. Might have a guest next week. We'll see. Might have an announcement of an event. By this time next week, it'll be the second to last day or last day of April. So if things are going to be kicking off in May, we might be seeing some announcements soon. Who knows? But thank you guys for listening. If you can follow us on iTunes, leave us a review. It definitely helps. We're also on Spotify. So if you listen to podcasts there, check us out. If you go to YouTube, search Controlled Interest, we'll pop up. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know when we upload because you can never trust YouTube sub boxes. Leave a like on the videos if you like them. Helps us out. Leave a comment. Let us know if you enjoyed anything we talked about or, want to maybe, pitch something that we missed. Let us know. Lastly, on Twitter, you can follow us collectively at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest abbreviated. You can follow Dom personally at Dom's Oreos. And you can follow me at Jared_. We will catch you guys next week.